The lake was swallowing the plane whole. Jamal's lungs screamed for air as freezing water poured through the cracked windshield. His fingers, numb and clumsy, fought with the seatbelt trapping the unconscious man beside him. Blood trickled from a gash above the man's eye, mixing with the rising water now at their chests. Come on, Jamal's voice cracked as he yanked at the twisted metal buckle. The plane lurched, tilted forward, the nose was already under. Through the chaos, Jamal noticed something strange, a leather briefcase handcuffed to the man's wrist, who handcuffs a briefcase to themselves, but there was no time, the water was at their necks now, dark, ice-cold, suffocating. His fingers finally found the release, click, the belt came free just as water covered their heads. Jamal grabbed the man's collar, kicked against the seat and pulled with everything he had, his vision blurred, his chest burned. The plane was a tomb pulling them down into the black. Then light surface, air. Jamal gasped, choking, dragging the limp body toward the shore as the tail of the private jet disappeared beneath the water with a final, gurgling hiss. If you think this is shocking already, wait until you hear the twist. Hit subscribe now so you don't miss it. But what Jamal didn't know yet was that this moment would expose a truth buried for 17 years. A truth that would shatter everything he thought he knew about his own life. 72 hours earlier. Jamal Washington was tired, not the kind of tired you fix with sleep, the kind that lives in your bones. At 19, he worked 3 jobs, morning shift at Henderson's auto shop, changing oil and rotating tires for minimum wage. Afternoons at Murphy's grocery, stocking shelves and hauling boxes. Nights, when his body had anything left, he delivered food on a beat-up bike with one working brake. He lived in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment in Southside with his grandmother, Esther, and his 8-year-old sister, Trinity. His mother had died when he was 12. His father never knew him, just a name on a birth certificate that led nowhere. Every dollar Jamal made went into 3 piles: rent, Grandma Esther's insulin, and Trinity's school supplies. Dreams, he used to have those. A scholarship letter from community college still sat in his drawer, 6 months past the acceptance deadline. He couldn't afford to stop working long enough to go to class. But Jamal wasn't bitter, he was good. The kind of good that stops to help elderly neighbors carry groceries, the kind that splits his last meal with a hungry kid on the bus, the kind that smiles even when the world gives him every reason not to. Southside wasn't easy. Sirens were the neighborhood lullaby. Gunshots punctuated the nights like cruel punctuation marks. Jamal had learned to walk with his head down, his hands visible, his movements slow and deliberate around police. He'd lost friends, buried classmates, watched potential disappear into prison cells and wooden boxes. But he kept going. Jamal, baby, you work too hard, Grandma Esther would say, watching him collapse onto the couch at midnight, muscles aching. Somebody's gotta, Grandma. Your mama would be proud, you know that. He'd smile, nod, pretend the weight wasn't crushing him. Trinity depended on him. She was brilliant, testing 3 grades ahead in math, devouring library books like candy. She wanted to be an engineer. Jamal would die before he let her potential rot in the same poverty that was eating him alive. 2 weeks ago, Trinity had drawn him a picture, 2 stick figures under a sun, labeled "Me and Jamal when we're happy." He'd taped it above his bed, a reminder of why he endured. Then came the medical bills. Grandma Esther's diabetes was getting worse. The insulin costs had doubled. They were 3 months behind on rent. The eviction notice was already taped to their door. Jamal needed a miracle. He just didn't know he was about to become one. It was a Thursday afternoon when everything shifted. Jamal was replacing brake pads at Henderson's when a sleek black Mercedes pulled into the shop. Wrong neighborhood for a car like that. The paint job alone probably cost more than Jamal made in a year. The driver stepped out, a white man in his 60s, gray hair, expensive suit, the kind of confidence that comes with power. Behind him, a younger guy in a dark suit and sunglasses. Security, Jamal figured. "We need an oil change, fast," the older man said, not looking at Jamal, already on his phone. "Yes sir, 20 minutes. As Jamal worked, he noticed something. The older man was agitated, kept checking his watch, snapping at whoever was on the phone. I don't care what the weather report says, we're flying out today. I have an 8 p.m. meeting in Chicago that can't be moved. Then the man dropped something, a business card fluttering to the oil-stained concrete. Jamal picked it up. Victor Castellano, CEO, Castellano Industries. Sir, you dropped. But Victor was already walking away, barking orders into his phone. Jamal pocketed the card, something nagging at him. The name Castellano felt familiar, like an echo of something he couldn't quite remember. He had no idea this moment would rewrite everything. That evening, Jamal's delivery route took him past Riverside Regional Airport, a small private airfield for wealthy executives and their jets. The sky had turned ugly, dark clouds rolling in like a bruise, wind whipping through the trees. His phone buzzed with a severe storm warning. He was pedaling past the fence line when he heard it, a plane engine sputtering, coughing, wrong. He looked up. A small private jet was trying to take off, nose lifting, but the engine sound was all wrong, choking, dying. It cleared the runway by maybe 50 feet, started banking left over the lake. Then the engine cut completely. Silence, horrible floating silence. The plane dropped like a stone. Jamal watched in frozen horror as it hit the water nose first, maybe 200 yards from shore. The impact sent up a geyser of white spray. The fuselage cracked. Water immediately began pouring in. For a split second, Jamal's brain screamed at him to call 911 to get help, to let someone else handle this. But there was no time, the plane was sinking fast. Jamal dropped his bike and ran. He hit the icy water at full sprint, his shoes filling immediately, his clothes becoming anchors. The cold stabbed into his chest like knives, but he kept swimming, stroke after desperate stroke toward the rapidly disappearing aircraft. Through the shattered cockpit window he could see two figures, one slumped, unconscious. The other, the pilot, was motionless, neck bent at an angle that meant Jamal was already too late for him. But the passenger. Jamal dove under as the plane tilted forward, nose down, swallowing water like a dying whale. His hands found the door handle, pulled, locked. He surfaced, gasped, dove again, found a rock at the lake bed, came back up. Smashed the window. That's when he saw the passenger's face clearly for the first time. Victor Castellano, the CEO from the auto shop. And that's when Jamal noticed the briefcase, handcuffed to Victor's wrist, locked tight. The water was at Victor's chin now, rising fast. Jamal squeezed through the broken window, cutting his arm on jagged glass, and reached for the seatbelt. But as his fingers fumbled with the release, something caught his eye. A photograph floating in the rising water, a picture that had come loose from somewhere in the chaos. Jamal's hands froze. The photograph showed a young black woman, smiling, holding a newborn baby. And behind her, his arm around her shoulder, stood a younger Victor Castellano. Written on the back, in ink now bleeding into the water. Janelle and our son never forget, VC. Jamal's heart stopped. His mother's name was Janelle. The water covered the photograph, dissolving the image into nothing. Victor's eyes opened, unfocused, glazed with pain and confusion. "Stay with me," Jamal shouted, his voice swallowed by the rush of water. "I'm getting you out." The plane groaned, metal shrieking as it tipped further forward. The water was at their shoulders now. Jamal's fingers, numb and shaking, finally found the seatbelt release. Click. Victor slumped forward into Jamal's arms, dead weight, the handcuffed briefcase swinging and slamming into Jamal's ribs. He grabbed Victor under the arms and pulled, kicking backward through the shattered window. Glass ripped through Jamal's jacket, biting into his shoulder blade. The pain was white-hot, but he couldn't stop. They cleared the window just as the cockpit filled completely. The plane tilted vertical, nose straight down, and began its final descent into the dark. Jamal kicked hard, one arm locked around Victor's chest, the other clawing toward the surface. His lungs were on fire, screaming, his vision tunneled, edges going black. Just a little more, just a little more. His head broke the surface and he gasped, choking on air and water. Victor was limp, face down, not breathing. "No, no, no!" Jamal flipped him over, struggled to keep both their heads above water while swimming backward toward shore. His legs were cramping, his arms felt like lead. 20 yards 15-10. His feet finally touched mud. He dragged Victor onto the rocky shore, collapsing beside him. Victor's lips were blue, no pulse. Jamal's hands moved on instinct, CPR training from a weekend lifeguard course he'd taken at the community center 3 years ago. Compressions, 30 of them, fast and hard. Come on, man, come on. Tilt the head, pinch the nose, 2 breaths. Nothing. More compressions. Jamal's arms shook with exhaustion. Breathe. 2 more breaths. Victor's body convulsed. Water erupted from his mouth. He rolled to his side, coughing violently, gasping for air. Alive. Jamal collapsed backward onto the rocks, chest heaving, staring up at the storm clouds rolling overhead. He'd done it, somehow impossibly he'd done it. But that photograph, the image burned into his mind even though the water had destroyed it. His mother's face, Victor's arm around her, our son. What did it mean? If this part has you on edge, hit the like button right now. It lets us know you want more stories like this. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Victor turned his head, eyes focusing on Jamal's face for the first time, really seeing him. And something changed in Victor's expression: recognition, shock, horror. His mouth opened but no words came out. Just a whisper, impossible. Then his eyes rolled back and he collapsed again, not unconscious this time but overwhelmed, broken. The hospital waiting room smelled like disinfectant and bad coffee. Jamal sat in a plastic chair wrapped in a thermal blanket, his clothes still damp, his shoulder bandaged where the glass had cut deep. Paramedics had checked him for hypothermia. Police had taken his statement 3 times. "You're a hero, kid," one officer had said, shaking his hand. That was some crazy brave stuff. But Jamal didn't feel like a hero. He felt hollow, confused. Grandma Esther arrived in a panic, Trinity clutching her hand. They'd seen the news, local stations were already running the story. Teen risks life to save CEO in plane crash. "Baby, what were you thinking?" Esther pulled him into a fierce hug, her whole body shaking. "You could have died." "I'm okay, Grandma, I'm okay." Trinity looked up at him with wide eyes. "They said you're a hero on TV." Jamal forced a smile, just did what anybody would do. But that wasn't true. Most people wouldn't have jumped into a frozen lake. Most people would have called 911 and waited for professionals. Why had he? A doctor approached, clipboard in hand. "Jamal Washington." "That's me. Mr. Castellano is awake, he's asking for you." Jamal's heart hammered. Is he okay? "Concussion, 3 cracked ribs, minor lacerations. He's very lucky you were there." The doctor paused. "He's quite insistent about speaking with you, says it's urgent." Grandma Esther squeezed his hand. "Go on, baby, we'll wait here." Victor Castellano looked smaller in the hospital bed. Older, vulnerable. The handcuffed briefcase sat on the side table, now unlocked and open, papers scattered. His eyes locked onto Jamal the moment he entered. "Sit down," Victor said quietly, "please." Jamal sat, his whole body tense. "You saved my life." "Yes, sir." "Do you know who I am?" "Victor Castellano, CEO of Castellano Industries." Victor's jaw tightened. "And do you know who you are?" The question hung in the air like smoke. I'm Jamal Washington, I work at." "Your mother," Victor interrupted, his voice cracking. "Her name was Janelle, wasn't it?" The room tilted. "How do you know that?" Victor closed his eyes, tears sliding down his weathered face. "Because I loved her. 20 years ago, I loved her more than anything in this world." "I was 25, Victor began, his voice barely above a whisper. "Fresh out of business school, my father had just handed me a junior position at the company. I was supposed to marry a woman from another wealthy family, arranged, calculated, good for business." He paused, gathering strength. "Then I met Janelle. She worked as a receptionist at one of our branch offices. She was radiant, kind, real, everything my world wasn't. We fell in love." Jamal's hands were shaking. "We kept it secret. My family would have destroyed her career, ruined her life if they knew, but we didn't care. We were going to run away together, start over somewhere they couldn't touch us." Victor's voice broke completely. "Then she got pregnant with you." The words hit Jamal like a physical blow. "I was your father," Jamal whispered. I am your father. Victor opened his eyes, looking directly at Jamal. I wanted to marry her, I wanted to give her everything, but my father found out, he threatened her, told her if she didn't disappear, he'd make sure she never worked again, that you'd grow up in poverty, that he'd destroy her entire family. So she left. She left to protect you. My father paid her a settlement which she refused. She only took enough to cover medical bills for the pregnancy. Then she vanished, changed her number, moved cities. I searched for years, Jamal, hired investigators, followed every lead, but she was gone. Tears streamed down Jamal's face. When did she die? 7 years ago, cancer. Jamal's voice was hollow. We couldn't afford the treatments. Victor's face crumpled. Oh God, no. She never told me about you, never said a word. Because I failed her, I wasn't strong enough to stand up to my family. I let them scare her away. I let you both go. Victor reached out with a shaking hand. But I never stopped looking. That briefcase, it's full of investigator reports, photos, every scrap of information I could find about her, about you. I've been searching for 18 years. Jamal stared at the scattered papers. Photos of his mother years before he was born, smiling and young, reports tracking her movements. School records with Jamal's name. You knew about me. I knew she had a son, I knew his birthday, your birthday, I knew his name was Jamal, but I could never find you. She'd covered her tracks too well. Victor's hand trembled. And today, when you pulled me from that water, when I saw your face, you have her eyes, her smile, I knew, even through the fear and the pain, I knew. Why were you flying in that storm? I got a tip. An investigator called, said he'd found a lead in Chicago, a woman matching Janelle's description, a teenager who might be. I couldn't wait, I had to know. I've spent 17 years living with this guilt, this grief. I had to find you. Victor looked up, his face raw with pain and hope. And then you found me instead. The next morning, news crews surrounded the hospital. But this time, the story was different. Victor Castellano stood at a podium, still bandaged, still weak, with Jamal beside him. Yesterday, this young man saved my life, Victor told the cameras, his voice steady now. But what you don't know is that he's my son. Gasps rippled through the crowd, cameras flashed. 18 years ago, I made the worst mistake of my life. I let fear and family pressure separate me from the woman I loved and the child we created together. I spent nearly 2 decades searching for them. Yesterday, my son, who didn't even know I existed, jumped into freezing water and pulled me from a sinking plane. Victor's hand found Jamal's shoulder. I can't undo the past, I can't bring back his mother, but I can do right by him now. Starting today, I'm establishing the Jamal Washington Foundation, a scholarship fund for kids from underserved communities who have the brilliance and the heart to change the world but not the resources. Reporters shouted questions. Additionally, Victor continued, I'm transferring 50% of my personal assets into a trust for Jamal and his family, effective immediately. His grandmother will receive full medical coverage for life. His sister Trinity will have a full-ride scholarship to any school she chooses. Jamal's legs nearly buckled. And finally, Victor turned to face him directly, ignoring the cameras. If you'll let me, I'd like to spend the rest of my life trying to be the father I should have been from the beginning. The room erupted, questions, chaos. But all Jamal could hear was his own heartbeat. All he could see was his mother's face in that photograph, young and hopeful and in love. She never stopped loving you, Jamal said quietly. Even though she never said your name, I could tell there was this sadness in her always, like she'd lost something she could never get back. Victor's face crumbled. I lost her too, I lost both of you. But I'm here now, Jamal said, we're here now. They stood there, father and son, surrounded by strangers and cameras and noise, and embraced for the first time in 18 years. Jamal Washington stood on the stage at Northwestern University, adjusting his graduation cap. Summa cum laude, degree in engineering, full scholarship paid for by the Jamal Washington Foundation, the first recipient of his mother's namesake program. In the audience, Grandma Esther wiped tears from her eyes. Beside her, Trinity, now 10 and taking advanced calculus classes, beamed with pride. And next to them, Victor Castellano applauded, his eyes shining. The foundation had awarded 247 scholarships in 2 years. Kids from Southside and neighborhoods like it all across the country, kids with Trinity's brilliance and Jamal's heart, now getting the chance they deserved. Victor had stepped down as CEO, dedicating his time to the foundation and to making up for lost years. He and Jamal had dinner every Sunday. It wasn't perfect, they still had wounds to heal, gaps to fill, but it was real. That morning, Jamal had visited his mother's grave, placed flowers, told her about graduation, about Trinity's latest science fair win, about the father who was trying so hard to do better. "I wish you could have told me," he'd whispered, "but I understand why you didn't. You were protecting me like you always did." The wind had rustled through the trees, and for just a moment Jamal felt her there, proud, peaceful, free. Now, as he walked across the stage to accept his diploma, Jamal thought about that freezing lake, that sinking plane, that impossible moment when everything changed. He'd jumped into the water to save a stranger. He'd pulled out a father. And in doing so, he discovered that the kindness his mother had taught him, the goodness she'd modeled even in poverty, even in pain, had come full circle. She'd sacrificed everything so he could live free from shame and burden. He'd saved a life and reclaimed a legacy. Victor approached after the ceremony, pulling Jamal into a tight embrace. "Your mother would be so proud," he said. "She already was," Jamal replied. "She taught me that love isn't about money or power, it's about showing up, about sacrifice, about doing the right thing even when it costs you everything." Victor nodded, tears streaming freely now. "She was a better person than I ever was. Then let's honor her by becoming better together." They stood there, surrounded by the crowd, two men connected by blood and grief and grace, and by a woman who'd loved them both enough to let go so they could find their way back. Kindness is a legacy that never dies. It echoes through generations, through frozen lakes and sinking plains, through sacrifice and redemption. And sometimes, just sometimes, it brings us exactly where we were always meant to be. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to remember that heroism isn't about being fearless, it's about loving people enough to be brave anyway. Drop a comment below with your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe for more true stories that prove humanity is still worth believing in.